Somniferum seeds range in many different colors. Here we have our pure whites, which are very light, almost white seed, an off-white seed, and that's usually for all flowers that are just pure white. The flower is pure white. And then the next color that we range into is it's the darker color than the pure whites, and these flowers tend to have white in them, but usually are mixed with a stripe of either red or pink in the flower as well, but they do have white in the flower also. And then moving on to our most common seed is our blue colored seeds, which is pretty much representative of almost all the Somniferum poppies out there, from your lavenders to your blues and purples, and then we have a very dark reddish, the flowers on these are mostly pure red or maybe a really dark purple like our black clouds or the Wizard of Oz reds, and this color seed is more of a dark brown. Let's move on to planting now. Now in some situations I like to use peat pellets, and those are those little teeny pellets that expand when you put in water in them, and I like to open up the tops a little wider so I have a larger growing area, and I'll take my seed and kind of sprinkle a few in there, and I'll pack them in so that retains the moisture once the moisture comes. Now you don't want to water them from the top. You're going to want to put water into the tray from the bottom. That way the seed will seek moisture below, and the root will start to grow down below. And these will sprout anywhere from a week to 2 weeks depending on temperature, light, and all the conditions. And now what you would do is take these and put them in your final place for planting. Now once your seeds sprout, you want to take your peat pellet, stick it into, I've got soil all under here. This is all the earth, and I put weed block down around it, and I cut holes, and I've got soaker hoses in there that will also water them. And once they start sprouting, you could leave a few on each pellet, and as they get bigger you want to thin out the smaller, weaker ones. And when I say thin, I just mean kill. Just pull them out, and you usually want to just leave 1 or 2 to each pellet, so that later when it gets older it will eventually grow into a little bit bigger of a plant. And this one's a different one. It's got copper tape around it for the slugs. You want to be careful of slugs and birds. Birds will eat the seeds before they sprout. Slugs will eat the sprouts once they sprout. This is just a regular storage bin. This is the bottom of it, and right here is the lid. This is the lid that snaps on to the top of this bin. Basically, we're going to use this as a mini greenhouse to protect your seeds from birds and slugs and outdoor temperatures. So what I do is I leave this out day and night. Before I do that, I'll pour water just in this little lid here and simply use this upside down as a greenhouse. And it even snaps in like that to secure it. First, before you plant any seeds, soak your pellets. So use this, pour a bunch of water in it, doesn't matter how much, and throw your pellets in there, let them soak overnight and soak up all the water that they can. Then transfer those wet pellets onto the lid and do your planting. Sprinkle the seeds onto each one and kind of press them into the tops. It's about a 2-week period or so that it takes for them to sprout. There's a bunch that sprout. You never know how many are going to come up. So eventually you're going to want just 1 per pellet that you put into the ground. you're going to want to thin these as they come up, and once you get a few sprouts going, let it dry out just a little, not too much, just so that their root systems will start gaining strength, because these are designed for roots to grow right through this little outer layer here. And there's other bigger organically made pots that you could put them in from here that you can plant right into the ground also, without taking them out and disturbing their root system. Buy these plastic cups here from the store, right? They're clear. Got some clear plastic cups. And these will be my new greenhouses that I'll use for each one of these. Once they go into the ground, I'm gonna put a plastic cup on top of it, and I'm gonna cut a couple little holes on the top to let some air exchange, carbon dioxide. Put the cup down and weigh it down on with a rock or something, or just secure it in the soil real well, and this will keep them protected. Now, you don't want to plant all your seeds in one basket, is what I like to say. Like I said, depending on where the seed you got grew and what the climate was there will depend on how it grows where you live. Now, you might want to start some indoors with peat pellets, the way I just showed, and then transfer them outside, but you do run the risk of them stunting if they, for some reason, depending on the temperature, the season, and where you are, sometimes poppies get stunted when you bring them outdoors from the indoors. They just stop growing for some reason. So sometimes I like to plant them in pots with this, it's like a garden fabric you could buy that actually has pores in it that'll let water in. And then this will protect it from birds eating the seeds and slugs. And then they'll start sprouting up here. You get a bunch of little sprouts here going, and that's just in a couple weeks. And that's also what I did with this big bin here. I also put some cover on it when these were sprouting, and now they're getting a little older and bigger. Now, you do run a risk when you plant in pots. For some reason, there are certain types of poppies, depending on their strain or where they originated from or what kind of soil they were grown in, from the person who grew it before you, will depend on how they do in pots. Some don't do well in pots. Some will stop growing. Their growth will be stunted. Now, here's an example of poppies that are doing really well in pots. Here's some pots all along here. These are all potted poppies, and they are doing great. They're blooming. So some strains will do fine in pots with certain types of soils, and some won't. When you give your poppies plenty of room to grow, they'll get big. Talking about a pretty large leaf here. So when you give them enough room and the right kind of soil and the right condition and enough sunlight, they love sunlight, pure, direct sunlight, they'll do really well. This is the same strain of seed planted at the same time that this plant was planted. Same exact seed planted at the same exact time. They're both the same age. It's just that one liked where it was planted, the others didn't. Nature is very complex, and it decides what it wants to do when. So I always suggest planting in a variety of different ways and places, using a variety of mediums, so you're sure to get a successful poppy plant from your plantings. Start some indoors, some outdoors, peat pellets, rows, and that way you're sure to get success. Here's a good example of a poppy in the cabbage stage. Well, it's just about to flower, so it's just getting into its flowering stage, but you can always tell Somniferum poppies apart because they have very smooth, serrated leaves, almost bluish in color if you compare it to something next to it. It's like something that's greener. Well, there's another poppy right there, but it's got a bluish tint to it. They don't have any fur on the leaves whatsoever. Of course, there's some fur walking by right there. The Oriental poppies have a fur-like substance on the leaf and on the pod, but this has no fur, and that's the only poppy that doesn't have fur is the Somniferum. Now, here's a quick maturing strain I got from Canada. Now this matures in about 55 days. Now what happens is once the poppy flowers, the petals will usually stay on for about 48 hours or so, and then they'll drop away. And you can see there's a bunch of pollen here, and they could self-pollinate pretty easily, but bees can also cross-pollinate them. Here's the petals coming off right here. Now if bees, get some pollen from this one, and they bring the pollen over and they fly onto this one while this is flowering and touch the top there, well, then you're going to get a cross-pollinated seed from this pod between these two types. And what happens after the petals fall off is this center part will keep growing and expanding for about 2 weeks until it gets about this size, a little bigger. They'll have kind of a blue tint. If you can see, as I rub this, you can see how I rubbed away this bluish tint that it has. So to harvest the seed, what you want to do is wait until the pod, you're going to want to leave the pod in the ground, on the plant, until it turns brown and starts rattling, and that's when the seeds will be ready. And here's what the finished pods look like when they're after you've harvested the seed, or before. It's hard. Here's another one. They're hard, and they've got little holes, little vents on the top. Sometimes those vents open naturally, and sometimes they take a little poking to open. But you could poke them and it still looks natural and get the seed out without having to drill a hole in the top. But one of these pods will hold hundreds of thousands of seeds for planting years to come.